Tucker Carlson put out a 35-minute expose on Thomas Crooks, the virtual assassin. I want to say, attempted assassin. He killed somebody. He's a murderer. He's dead. He was a murderer. He's burning in hell. Hopefully there is a hell. People like say, oh, the attempted assassination, as though Corey Comparatori was not murdered that day, as though 2 other Americans were not grievously injured that day. People who have their stupid, psychotic conspiracy theories that Trump was never shot, even so much as being floated by the prior FBI, that it might have been a piece of shrapnel, a piece of glass from the teleprompter. Jail. So Tucker Carlson puts out that expose last week, and it contains some information that I had not seen, which was video footage and evidence of a social media footprint by, what's his first name now? Thomas Crooks. And the day that Tucker Carlson puts out the post, it says, the FBI told us Thomas Crooks tried to kill Trump last summer, but somehow had no online footprint. The FBI lied, and we can prove it because we have his posts. The question is, why? Story tomorrow. I'm not good at doing Tucker Carlson's voice. That post was on November 13, 2025. Within a matter of minutes afterwards, November 13, 2025, the FBI Rapid Response puts out a tweet. And do you want to talk about, like, I know Dan Bongino. I like Dan Bongino. I respect Dan Bongino. And I actually trust Dan Bongino. Kash Patel, I didn't know him. I had no prior existing relationship with him that I could attest to his bona fides as a human. And I'm questioning his competence. I'm not saying he's been honeypotted by a Mossad agent because I don't believe that. I'm not saying it's deliberate sabotage. He might just not be up for the position and might be bungling things left, right, and center. Whoever the hell at the FBI thought this was a good idea, you need to smack yourself in the face, to use Robert Barnes' expression. You need to smack yourself in the face and say, what the hell was I thinking? The FBI Rapid Response, when does it started? Joined November 2025. The date of Tucker Carlson's post. And they come out and they say, this FBI has never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint, ever. Read it again, people, and you know where I'm going with this. Maybe you don't. This FBI has never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint, ever. To which they got community noted, in a July 30, 2024 Senate hearing, FBI Deputy Director Paul Abate disclosed a social media account, quote, believed to be associated with the shooter. Abate went on to describe, quote, a general absence. Sorry, let me rephrase this, Anodi. Went on to describe a, quote, general absence of other information to date from social media, end quote. So, as you all know, I used to be a lawyer. I believe I'm still a lawyer, but I know I voluntarily relinquished my license in Quebec in good standing without ever having had any issues because I no longer needed that license. I was paying $3,000 a year Canadian so that jackasses on the internet could file anonymous ethics complaints against me because they didn't like me tweets. Fucking sissies. I had to actually defend against this in a phone call. I was like, you're getting an anonymous complaint. I've been in Florida for 2 years because you don't like my tweets. So I used to be a lawyer for over 13 years. I can think like a scoundrel. And now the wording is very important. This FBI has never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint. They could argue, the FBI, to say, no, this community notes is not needed. The FBI Deputy Director Abate is not this FBI. It was that FBI. It's not Trump's FBI. It was Biden's FBI. So when we said this FBI, us, Patel, never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint, it's true. And this footnote is, this community note is unnecessary. And the other way they can do it is they'll say, okay, look, this FBI, because the FBI exists prior to Trump, and it's the FBI. They could say, this FBI, excuse me, has never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint. We said he had minimal online footprint. We said he had surprisingly little, but we never said he had no online footprint. Semantics, wordsmiths of the devil that obfuscate the truth. The fact of the matter is, and anybody who at the FBI thought this was a good idea, I think I'm not within this pay grade. I would not take this job. you need someone to give you a little bit of PR advice and strategic advice. This was dumb. This was silly. And I don't know, the FBI rapid response is typically for the purposes of crafting narratives and responding to online commentary, which is not necessarily what the FBI should be doing. And it might be one of Kash Patel's mistakes, is being a little bit too eager to offer social media posts, online commentary of ongoing investigations and coming out with information that an hour and a half later proves to be untrue. So this FBI, not theirs, whatever. Bottom line, everybody knows what they meant when Abate came out and said he has minimal social media footprint, bunch of encrypted accounts, yada, yada, but nothing online. Bullshit. To such a degree that even Bongino at the time said bullshit. Here, this is Owen Schroyer's posting. And by the way, this is not to say, so Bongino's, therefore don't trust Bongino. No, Bongino was right then one way or the other, because he was commenting on the implausibility of that FBI telling us this kid, 20 years old, had no social media footprint. I think we've seen it already. Bear with me. Bongino saying, we're being told by this FBI that he had no social media footprint. It's patently implausible.
People who have credibly threatened our protectees. I've never seen anything like it. If you would have told me it was a 60-year-old guy who lived most of his life without a computer and for the last 10 years had been planning this, hard to believe, but digestible. You're telling me a 20-year-old kid who's grown up in the digital era figured this out when he was, 13? To never get an online presence? We've seen nothing. Nothing. We're now 6 weeks in. There's not a Facebook photo. You know, it's incredible. We know every single thing about these shooting incidents when there's a political narrative to be had by the media and the other side. We do. You know who their high school girlfriend was. Sadly, you know everything about these people. We know nothing about this guy. And sophisticated explosives, we have this massive law enforcement bureaucracy. No one's got him with an online search history at a library saying, how do I build this? He's 20 years old. It just defies logic.
It defies logic. This is the current deputy director of the FBI 8 months ago, or maybe a year. Is it a year ago? A year ago, saying it defies logic. And now you have the FBI rapid response team thinking it makes sense to basically say that, throw Dan Bongino under the bus. I'm telling you, I sincerely believe there are forces within this Trump administration who are bad faith actors who are trying to discredit two of who were the most promising men to bring institutionalized reform to what I believe to be a fundamentally and incorrigibly corrupt institution, the FBI. But I believe that whoever's doing this is making these men look bad. What the hell is the point of all of that? Oh, yeah, that's right. They're lying and gaslighting. The expose that came out the other day is mind-blowing. That the connections that you're going to draw, if you've heard this, I'm say not late. Yesterday I had Chris Martenson on. We talked about the Charlie Kirk, his theory about the assassination, and by now you might have heard this too many times to be interested in, but hopefully I'll add some insights. Oh yeah, no, I thought I pulled up the Miranda Devine article. This is from Fox News. Trump would-be assassin in Butler had massive digital footprint, alleges columnist. Brianna Morello has now allegedly got access to this file, and it was the same one Tucker Carlson looked at. Miranda Devine, and if I can get her on, I'm going to try to get her on at some point this week if we can make our schedules work. Miranda Devine says source provided information from 17 online accounts belonging to Thomas Crook by Stephanie Samsel. So Stephanie is reporting on what Miranda Devine broke. It was a Newsweek article. The digital trail of President Donald Trump's would-be assassin and murderer, Thomas Crook, tells quite a different story than FBI's congressional statements about the 20-year-old New York Post columnist Miranda Devine told America Reports. We were sort of led to believe that Thomas Crooks was really a ghost, that there was no motive that could be ascertained from his online accounts. And yet, a source has provided us with a lot of information from 17 different online accounts that Thomas Crooks had. Can you believe this? And the one thing that we're gonna have to let stew in all of this is why the hell is this FBI administration making such big mistakes that they could otherwise exploit to make the prior FBI look like a corrupt hack of a weaponized institution? I can think of only two reasonable explanations. And by the way, those are either they themselves are fundamentally incompetent, or being sabotaged, or they've still got active players within the administration that they may or may not have actually given raises to, which sort of still goes back to them being duped, or they're just being outright sabotaged by bad faith actors within the FBI who are the loyalists to Biden or the loyalists to Trump derangement syndrome and are doing everything within their deep state powers to emasculate and delegitimize Patel and Bongino. And that's not to poo-poo all of the other good work that they've done as a law enforcement agency, to the extent the FBI is that, which, it should have never been under the Constitution, but set that aside. They're doing good work. But on the big stuff, Thomas Crooks, January 6th, Epstein, they are getting absolutely humiliated to the point where their most vocal, prominent supporters and people who had faith in them are now saying, what the fuck is going on? And not in any way that is like, haha, I told you so. Like, what is going on? We were promised answers on Jan 6 pipe bomb. It took Steve Baker to break that story, and we've gotten bubkiss of a response from the FBI. We were promised Butler, full disclosures, full transparency. What the hell happened? How did this guy get there? With a rangefinder, with a drone, in a Pac-Man perimeter, onto the roof. Person of interest got lost in the crowd, and they still let Trump take the stage. How the hell did that happen? Answers, nothing. Epstein disclosures, debacle. In an op-ed Monday, Devine demanded a better explanation from FBI and Secret Service about what led Crooks to attempt to assassinate Trump over a year ago. Wait until you hear this. July 24, Crooks fired 8 shots. Okay, we know this. He killed Corey Comparatori. He also injured 2 others. The columnist described a commonality between Crooks and Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, who was charged with murder of the lady. Crooks' accounts range from, Google Play to that site called Deviant Art. I'm either ignorant enough or proud enough to say I had no idea what the hell Deviant Art is. And it's not because I'm in it. I have no to look at it, because from what I'm told, it's just not something you want on your browser history, which is probably the biggest, or one of the biggest hubs online for this sexual fetish called furries, where people dress up and fantasize about animal characters, cartoon characters, and cartoon characters that are sort of humanized. I think the word is anthropomorphized. She also continued, it's very bizarre, but we also saw that with Charlie Kirk's alleged killer, Tyler Robinson, who was involved in this bizarre furry culture. Now, let me just take this out for 1 second. I've said it before, I said it again, I'm just going to remind everybody. According to the text messages in the Charlie Kirk murder, whether or not you believe them, you think that they're falsified by the FBI, whatever, from the evidence or the allegation of evidence that we have to date, Tyler Robinson began to get radicalized about a year ago. This is according to his family as well. About a year ago. This dude who got radicalized off furry perversion, drugs, and trans activism got radicalized about a year ago. At the exact same time, this guy allegedly got radicalized as well, because he wasn't always anti-Trump. He used to be pro-Trump back in the day. Coincidence. Same time of year, same types of assassinations. There was a murder in Corey Comparatori. Same type of MO. Same type of access to a roof to let it happen. Utah University has got some explaining to do. And you can either say it's just a coincidence, or maybe it's not just a coincidence. And why the hell is the FBI not showing full transparency? I was having a discussion with someone about, I can understand in the Charlie Kirk murder case, they're bringing Tyler Robinson to trial. There might be other conspirators who are under investigation. And so there might be good reason for which there's not more transparency, or at least the transparency that people are demanding as it relates to the evidence, the bullets, the videos, and all this other stuff, the autopsy report, the coroner's report, all this other stuff. There's better reasons in the Charlie Kirk assassination. You've got an upcoming trial. You don't necessarily want to divulge your plan of action strategy so that the defense or others can strategize around it. You don't necessarily want to be accused of tainting the jury pool like the Dateline did with the Kohlberger guy when they had this massive expose. So in that case, there's at least a plausible argument for not disclosing all of the information. Like Tucker Carlson noted in his expose, there's no reason not to in this case. Crooks is dead. There's no trial coming up. There's no jury pool to be tainted. And there were questions that remain, the most fundamental questions remain unanswered a year later. Crooks allegedly used they, them pronouns on the platform, and Devine added. Some people were saying it's the default pronouns, but whatever, it's still not a good excuse. Columnists also sounded the alarm on Crooks appearing to flip 180 in his political ideology in January 2020. His online comments from, he was very young, 15, 16, 17. Exactly what Bongino was saying. Nobody that age doesn't have an online presence. Bongino was right. Show us how he became increasingly violent and sort of radicalized against Democrats. He was pro-Trump. Something happened to make him become rabidly anti-Trump. And again, the rhetoric took more and more of a violent turn. He started brushing up against, there was a neo-Nazi by the name, fake name, William Teppers, who started encouraging Crooks in more and more violent rhetoric. Are they looking at William Teppers? I'm not saying this to assert it as a matter of fact. Past his prologue, we've seen cases where feds were entrapping and encouraging the behavior that they could then either go and foil and make themselves the heroes, or let happen. And you have the unfortunate assassination of the leading candidate for the Republican Party, Donald John Trump. Who the hell was William Teppers? Have they investigated this guy? Why would the FBI not disclose this? Maybe they're investigating it still. Who knows? And then suddenly something happened in August 2020, and he just disappeared online. Although former FBI Director Paul Abate told Congress, yada, yada, appears to reflect anti-Semitic and anti-immigrant themes to espouse political violence. Yeah, and they used it as a gun control argument back after Butler. They're described as extreme in nature. We see now from the exposure, a lot of online information that the FBI either chose not to look at or something keeping it under wraps, Devine asserted. Okay, well, I don't know that we got any more in there. And by the way, some of the stuff, posting comments online, on Twitter, on YouTube, about political violence against politicians and political parties. Violent, egregious, black and white threats, calls to violence, that would get flagged ordinarily. When they went and arrested, and then, they went to arrest and executed the 70-some-odd-year-old blind guy who was putting up these threats against Biden on Facebook. They saw those posts, they went, and they killed. Unnecessarily so, according to many. They didn't have to do what they did to this guy in order to arrest him or try to arrest him that led to him being killed. Those posts that Thomas Crook was making, and there were a lot of them, a lot of death to Democrats at first and then death to Republicans and Trump later on. Did those get flagged? Was he known to FBI? Was he recruited? Was he brainwashed? Was he manipulated? Were others? Do we find out that this is something of the FBI creating the terror to resolve the terror, like they were alleged to have done in the Texas Muhammad drawing case, where they were literally on the tail of the terrorists who opened fire in Texas. Look it up. So this guy had an online footprint. It was pretty extensive. It was pretty violent. It was pretty radicalized. If there are red flag, indications or evidence, this was red flag. And we're lied to at the time, told that it doesn't exist. Dan Bongino doesn't believe it. And a year later, this current FBI is not lifting the veil and showing us what the hell's going on.